What do we want?
Election reform.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Election reform.
When do we want it?
Now.
Welcome to the Beau Show. Wouldn't that be a worthy protest? When you look at how some states really mangled the 2020 election and were complicated with things like overnight ballot dumps, absentee ballots sent out without request, ballot harvesting, secretaries of state changing the rules at the last minute, and big money groups coming in to oversee elections, it was only a matter of time before some states started to improve their process. Senator Rand Paul has been talking about this for quite a while, which is why he said this to George Stupidopoulos. Take a look.
There are not two sides of the story. This has been looked at in every single state. The election results were certified in every single state.
There are two sides to every story. George, you're forgetting who you are. You're forgetting who you are as a journalist. If you think there's only one side, you're inserting yourself into the story to say, I'm a liar because I want to look at election fraud and I want to look at secretaries of state who illegally changed the voter laws without the permission of their state legislatures. That is incontrovertible. It happened. And you can't just sweep that under the rug and say, oh, nothing to see here, and everybody's a liar and you're a fool if you bring this up. You're inserting yourself into the story. A journalist would hear both sides, and there are two sides to this story.
I'm standing by facts. There are not two sides to facts.
For the record, this is one of the best explanations for examining election fraud claims, but it's also a biting and accurate commentary of mainstream media propaganda and bias. You can tell that George is not even open to the possibility that laws were broken that could alter the voting results, because George is not a real journalist. He's a Democrat in a high-paying job masquerading as a journalist. Governor Ron Desantis talked about why he felt his state of Florida wanted to shore up its integrity.
This keeps us ahead of the curve. We put a lot of effort into last election, and we wanted to make sure we did it well. We had 11 million votes counted by midnight, 99%. We think this will make it even better as we go forward, and so we're proud of the strides that we've made. We're not resting on our laurels, and me signing this bill here says, Florida, your vote counts. Your vote is going to be cast with integrity and transparency, and this is a great place.
But now, if you look at how media is covering these election reforms, look at the verbiage. Cheddar News, for instance, gives 10 top stories of the day via email. Always read this just to see what they're doing. And this is their byline and description. Take a look. Voting restrictions. Florida is the latest state to enact controversial new voting restrictions in an unusual move. Governor DeSantis gave Fox News exclusive access to the bill signing ceremony and barred other outlets from covering the event. Florida's law makes it much more difficult to cast mail-in ballots by severely limiting drop boxes, among other things. At the same time, lawmakers in Texas approved new voting restrictions that go even further, banning election officials from mailing out absentee ballot applications and giving partisan poll watchers more power. Just so we're clear here, Cheddar is owned by Altice USA, who, according to OpenSecrets.org, gave money only to Democrats in the 2020 election cycle. Cheddar links to a New York Times article, the title of which is, Florida and Texas join the march as Republicans press voting limits. Limits, key word there. So right away, Cheddar and New York Times are describing the reforms as controversial and using words like restrictions and limits, like somehow they are cheating voters of access. As Randy Moss says on the NFL Countdown, come on, man.
Come on, man.
These laws are not restrictive. I'm sorry, Stacey Abrams, but they're not. They expand access, but they restrict cheating and unobserved funny business. Once again, just like the Georgia voting reforms that caused Coca-Cola to become a Woca-Cola, let's look at the reforms and try to make some educated decisions here. Florida's Senate Bill 90 aims to possess the strongest election integrity measures in the country, according to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. First, the bill makes sure they are enforcing voter ID. Again, where is all this outrage coming from that requiring an ID to vote, either in person or by absentee, is racist, bigoted, or suppressive? Anyone can get one. They are free. Once again, come on, man.
Come on. Come on, folks.
To get your COVID vaccine, at least at Walgreens, you have to provide your ID. So there you go. The bill bans ballot harvesting, the corrupt practice of collecting droves of votes by a third party that is not related to you, and then dumps them with other votes somewhere down the road. SB 90 also prohibits mass mailing of balloting. Now, Florida has always had absentee ballot voting for a long time, but in this new bill, you request the ballot, you receive it, you mail it in. But indiscriminate mass mailing of ballots is dangerous and rife for tomfoolery or double voting or triple voting. The bill also allows votes to be tracked as they come in real time. Not the results, but just so officials know who is voting and what their registration is. And it keeps track of that so that someone can't dump 100,000 votes several days later. Florida had 99% of votes counted by midnight in 2020, so SB 90 just strengthens that. As far as drop boxes go, they are equally distributed so that all have access, but they have to be monitored in person. The law also prohibits the use of private funds for election-related expenses. So let's aim this back at the media, who calls this measure voting restrictions. If you ensure integrity by monitoring drop boxes, preventing willy-nilly absentee mailouts, requiring voter ID, and prevent third-party tinkering, that's just shoring up your security, not restricting anything or any person. It's amazing how the media can spin something so perversely and intentionally. Imagine this headline instead. Florida passes new voting laws to increase security and integrity of elections. That is both fair and accurate. But it's like George Stupidopoulos' attitude, the idea that there was zero malfeasance, zero problems, nothing to see here. That's just nonsense. To be honest, if every state had measures like Florida's, we could actually feel better about the 2020 results. We wouldn't question them. I would just say, okay, fair and square, Biden won. And like I've said before, credit to Stacey Abrams for playing the game in Georgia. She was previously a state rep and understood how voting laws worked in Georgia, which is why she was able to galvanize the vote there. Let's be honest, the GOP got outplayed there. But then look at Pennsylvania, where the Secretary of State changed the rules at the last minute. And then now, Arizona, where this audit is creating such a stink that the Dems have sent over 100 lawyers there. Now, whatever happens in Maricopa County, I hope we can move past this. But when you cast your ballot, it really becomes about voter confidence. We just blindly trust that our elections are free and fair, and that the machines do the right tabulations. We've come a long way from the hanging Chad and Bush v. Gore, remember that? But as tallies get more digital, we are trusting the security. But we know that hackers are very good. Look at ransomware that hacked the Colonial Pipeline on the East Coast, preventing oil from getting to the eastern U.S. right now. There's always someone out there that's just lurking in the shadows. This last election was a very tricky one. And while I don't believe anyone should just yell fraud if they don't have the evidence to back it up, there were some shady things that happened that have to be amended. Florida is taking this very seriously by reducing the opportunity for problems with the secure vote by mail system, monitored drop boxes, and reduction of outside influence and harvesting. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, a total of $14 billion were spent on the 2020 election cycle. That is unprecedented. That is how badly politicians want to influence your vote. What I'd like to know from you, honestly, is, the voter, what was the thing that most influenced your vote this past election? Was it the economy, the personality of the candidate? Was it a TV ad or a social media post? Was it driven by the way your family or friends voted? Did you feel like you couldn't share your vote with your circle of friends and family for fear of blowback or judgment? Did you lose family or friendships because of it? See, when you look at how much money is spent on elections, it's clear that the belief is that your vote can be bought. And I think that maybe because people do not take time to really ponder what they want from a representative, they don't know the issues or how policies affect the way we live. But you're starting to see some of that now. I'd say that one of the biggest changes that we see right now is what is happening at the border, and now how taxes may affect you. And for Joe Biden to intimate that election laws like Georgia's and Florida's are suppressive is simply misguided. The Brennan Center for Justice frames the new laws this way. Watch this. In a backlash to 2020's historic voter turnout, and under the pretense of responding to baseless and racist allegations of voter fraud and election irregularities, state lawmakers have introduced a startling number of bills to curb the vote. That's interesting. They are actually calling any allegations racist. Any allegations. As of March 24th, there have been 361 bills introduced in legislatures in 47 states. Several have already been signed into law: Georgia, Arkansas, Iowa, Utah, Texas, and Florida. Bills in New Hampshire and Arizona are moving swiftly as well. In New York, they passed a bill that expands automatic registration, which we already know is flawed. Leave it to New York to make that kind of mistake. Since when have they generated any common sense legislation on anything? Now, the Democrats in Congress were trying to preempt this with H.R. 1. It's called the For the People Act, which attempts to override these state legislatures and federalize many election laws. In response, some states are introducing non-binding resolutions to circumvent it. And then there's this issue. Ah, yes, the good old dead person vote. That's what purging voter rolls can fix, but liberals somehow find that restrictive. And here's some news from across the pond. Boris Johnson and the UK government are introducing, voter ID requirements this week, calling it a reasonable approach. I think I would have to agree with that sentiment. Something else to think about, which I have touched on earlier, is that the media plays a role in the messaging about election reform laws. I mentioned Cheddar News and the New York Times regarding the Florida law. So the media, once again, is inserting itself into the narrative, as Rand Paul so accurately stated, because they are actively rooting and campaigning for the Democrats in the way that they present their news. That's just dishonest. And look at the labor market. There are shortages because Congress has made it more lucrative to stay at home on federal unemployment than go back to work. They have incentivized laziness. This is why we got the highly lackluster April jobs report. Unemployment ticked up to 6.1%, and 266,000 jobs were added of an expected 1 million. 40% of people would make more by collecting than working. This economy is not roaring back like they want you to believe. It was roaring right before the pandemic hit, but these numbers are devastating. Biden is in denial. He thinks the unemployment benefits have had no effect on the labor shortage. Once again, Governor DeSantis has echoed this now by requiring unemployment recipients to complete work search requirements, noting that Florida's unemployment rate is below the national average, but companies are hiring. And you can't incentivize idleness while we need workers. Florida has also passed a law outlawing violent riots to protect Floridians from looting and property damage, as well as the blocking of streets and thoroughfares. It also aims to prevent what's called aggravated rioting and mob intimidation. Now this makes sense because when you look at many of the businesses that got destroyed and looted in like Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, a lot of them were minority owned. A bill like this can protect people like that from unnecessary bedlam and chaos. I think we all saw the lawlessness last year, and that's got to stop. If you do things peacefully, you don't have to create laws like this. So Florida has really taken the lead among states in terms of personal freedom, common sense election integrity, protection of its citizens through anti-rioting measures, and also getting people back to work. Even though Florida never really experienced some of the chaos and problems that we saw in many other states throughout this pandemic, they've kind of taken it upon themselves to lead rather than follow and be the example. And if you think about it, it's probably good they are doing this, because with the influx of people from blue states to a place like Florida, all it takes is enough voters to tip the scales the other way and bring bad voting into a sound state. Florida has become not just about sun, sand, and good times. It has become about freedom and preserving the American way of life. I'm Beau, and that's the show. Thanks for watching.